Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Good. Yeah, good. Good to see so many of you. So anyhow, today I thought we would start with an article on South Korea. I think all of you know, been following that news a bit. I was kind of surprised on, I think it was Tuesday night. Yeah, it was Tuesday night. I kept getting messages on my phone from people saying, what's going on in South Korea? Because they were kind of shocked or surprised by this, this news. So anyhow, I thought it was very interesting, and maybe it's something we can learn a few words from. So today the headline said, NSB keeping watch on South Korean events. It says, aid for Taiwanese. The Bureau would determine whether there would be any long-term effects on South Korea's domestic politics, the NSB's top official said. So this is the Taiwanese government looking at Korean, the situation in Korea. You know this word here, this word domestic, right? What does domestic mean? Yeah, inside. Now, domestic can also mean internally. Like, for example, when we say, sometimes we talk about, the government says that if someone says they are having domestic problems, or sometimes we hear about people talking about domestic violence or problems. Often when you hear this kind of words, it doesn't actually mean inside your government, inside your country. It actually means at home, in your house, okay? So often the word domestic violence means like if there is somebody using violence inside the family or inside the home, like maybe a parent is physically abusing their children or something like that. So domestic it means inside, like internal. But obviously I think probably the most time we use this is for inside a country. So for example, if we say, what is your domestic transportation like? Or what is your favorite kind of domestic transportation? You might say, well, I like to drive my own car, or I like to take a bus when I travel from Taichung to Taipei or Kaohsiung. Okay, that's domestic transportation. But of course, the opposite of domestic would be international, right? If you go abroad, if you go to another country. But another word I see this domestic used a lot is we say domestic helper, okay? So a domestic helper would be perhaps a slightly, better name. In the old days, long time ago, people would say a maid, okay? So, a maid is somebody who comes to your home and helps you with stuff, right? Maybe they clean the house, or they wash the dishes, or they, do all kinds of internal, housekeeping. I guess you could actually call them a housekeeper, although housekeeper is a very broad term. It's an E, yeah. Housekeeper, maid. But domestic helper is kind of probably a more modern term. It sounds a little bit nicer, actually. When you say maid sounds kind of outdated. It sounds kind of old-fashioned. And of course, a maid would always be a woman. I mean, maid is a feminine or female term. So so domestic helper would be somebody who comes to your house and helps you. Right now, for example, in some homes they hire foreigners, 外籍人士 to come in and become a domestic helper. They help care for things. Now, I think in Taiwan, because usually these women from Vietnam or Indonesia or other countries, they're actually there to care for older people in the home. So often we call them a caretaker. Okay, so we might say a foreign caretaker. Often there's right next to my house across the street, there's a small park, 公园. And every single morning around 8 or 9 o'clock, I can hear people speaking Indonesian, from the language from Ini. And I look out my window, and there's about 3 or 4 of these Indonesian caretakers, and they're pushing 推车 wheelchairs, and they bring all their usually older men or women that they're caring for, and they go to the park, and then they get some sunshine and get outside, and then they chat with each other, and they seem to have a good time. So anyhow, we call those foreign caretakers. So there's many words we use for this. So why don't we first of all go back to this word. Let's say this together. Domestic. Domestic. Domestic violence. Domestic violence. Domestic helper. Helper. Maid. Housekeeper. Caretaker. Yeah, so these are all words that we use today. Like I said, we don't use the word maid as much anymore. Yeah, anyhow, that's any questions about that? Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, it says here they're looking for the long-term effects of South Korea's domestic politics. Now, of course, domestic politics means they're talking about the country, not the house. Yeah, ama is a very we don't use that word in America that much. It's used for Waigoren living in Taiwan and living in. So when I was a little kid, we had an ama at our house, and she was an older woman, Taiwanese, who came and helped my mother, with the cooking and the cleaning the house and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I have good memories of her. I remember her very well because she would come to our house every day and help our family. And it seemed like many I don't know if Taiwanese families had that, but many foreign families would have somebody like that would come and help them. And it was kind of like a maid, but somebody who just helped out. Of course, she was paid for her work. Yeah. Well, I mean, I hear the term ama here, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think somehow that got transferred. Yeah. So, in fact, it's very interesting. I've met foreigners, Waigoren, who grew up in Taiwan, just like me, and they come back to Taiwan as adults, and they're looking for their ama. They want to find they actually go around and they try to find the woman who used to care for them, because they have all this strong connection, with her, almost like a second mother. And so they come back to Taiwan and they're trying to figure out, because often when you're a child, right, you don't know her name, you don't know who you just call, you don't really know her full name. So sometimes it's a little bit challenging. Okay, so let's look at this article. It says South Korea's short-lived imposition of martial law late on Tuesday was the result of a domestic political dispute. National Security Bureau Director General Tsai Ming-yen told reporters on the sidelines of a legislative meeting yesterday, adding that Taiwan was watching to see if the incident would have any long-term effect on the region. Okay, so let's look at a few words here. Okay, now, first of all, this word here, or two words, martial law. Does everybody know what that means? This is something that in Taiwan, of course, if you're a little bit older, you remember Taiwan also had martial law until 1987, right? 87. So from 1947, I believe, to 1987, for 40 years, Taiwan had martial law, or Taiwan was under martial law. When we say martial law, basically, what does this word martial refer to? Military, yeah. So it's really another word for military. Although we don't use the word martial as much as military. Military is more of a common word, but martial also refers to military. Sometimes it also is used to refer to as a 形容词 to talk about like war, something to do with war or military, 战争. We talk about martial. Okay, so martial is that kind of word that we use. Of course, the T is pronounced with a SH sound, like a sh sound. So we say martial. Why don't we say together martial? Martial. So martial law basically means the military is in control. It's military rule. We could say military rule, martial law, whatever you want to call it. There's different ways to, yes. What? Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's actually a good reminder. So he used the word martial arts. We say kung fu. I don't know. Kung fu, right? I think Americans would just say kung fu, right? But that doesn't mean, I mean, that's the way they say it, right? But, that doesn't mean. So the word here, martial, he just made a good reminder. Martial arts, right? If we use martial with this word arts. Now you might think art, that's like 艺术, right? But art also means like a skill, right? Something you can do. So what is a martial art? He mentioned Kung Fu, right? Kung Fu. What else? We have 空手道, right? Karate, right? We have, judo. We have taekwondo, taiji chuan. Yeah, so there's all these martial arts. Basically, it's a skill of fighting, right? You know how to fight. So we call that a martial art. So for example, you could say he loves to study martial arts, or there is a martial arts school. So that's a very common term that we use to describe this kind of skill or. Yeah, he's cool. Yeah, Bruce Lee seems kind of cool. I mean, of course, he died when I was very young, but yeah, he seemed like an interesting guy. Yeah. So why don't we say this one more time here with that word, martial arts. Martial arts. Okay. So it says here, South Korea is short-lived. Now, when you see the word short-lived, of course, you can tell what it means. It means short-lived. It did not live a long time, right? So basically, it only lasted a very short time. You can say his short-lived idea, or the short-lived project, or the short-lived attempt to do something. It means it did not last very long. Okay, so their short-lived imposition of martial law. Now, we've learned this word before. It comes from the word to impose, a 动词, I-M-P-O-S-E. Okay, to impose, I think we actually talked about this last time. What is to impose means to do what? To force it on somebody else, or to put it on somebody else. So what does the government's job? The government's job is to impose laws, right? Okay, so if you go out and you get on your motorcycle and you're driving too fast and the police stop you, it's because the government has imposed a speed limit, right? They say you cannot drive over 50 on this road or 60 on this road. So they're imposing, they're pushing or putting on a law. We often use this word for laws or regulations or guidelines, 规定 or whatever. We might say to impose something. Now, again, impose can also mean to bother somebody, right? If you interrupt somebody or you come over and you're not invited, you might say, you might say, I'm sorry to impose on you. I'm sorry to give you this trouble or to put myself on you, right? So why don't we say that word together, to impose. To impose. And then the 名词 version of that is this word, imposition. Imposition. Okay, so you could say, if you were interrupting somebody, you could say, sorry for the imposition. I think most people would say sorry to impose, but you could say sorry for my imposition or sorry for the imposition. You could say that. Okay, so South Korea's short-lived imposition of martial law late on Tuesday was the result of domestic political dispute. Now, you know the word dispute, right? What's a dispute? Argument. What else? Disagreement. Yeah. So anything like that, you say a dispute with somebody. Now, dispute can be very small, it can be very minor, or it could be a big deal, right? Like right now, I was reading this morning, there's a dispute, of course, between China and the Philippines in Nanhai, right, in the South China Sea. That's a very serious dispute. But you could have a dispute with your friend over, what's your favorite restaurant, right? You could have a very minor disagreement with somebody. Okay, so why don't we say it together? Dispute. Dispute. Okay, so this was a domestic, internal, like inside South Korea, political dispute, according to the National Security Bureau Director General Tsai Ming-yen. Okay, so, and this was, he told the reporters this on the sidelines of a legislative meeting. So there was like a Li Fa Yuan, they were having a meeting, and on the sidelines, we've talked about this before, if you have a 运动比赛, the sideline is the line that goes down the side of the 足球场 or the, and so they basically, it doesn't mean there was a real line, but it means that it was outside of this meeting. They were talking to the 记者, and he said this, okay? So Taiwan is watching to see if this incident, this thing that happened, would have any long-term, 长期 effect on the region. Okay, so let's read this together. South Korea's short-lived imposition let's say that last part, short-lived imposition of martial law late on Tuesday was the result of a domestic political dispute. Let's say it again, domestic political dispute. National Security Bureau Director General Tsai Ming-yin told reporters on the sidelines of a legislative meeting yesterday, adding that Taiwan was watching to see if the incident would have any long-term effect on the region. Right. So effect, also we have the word affect, A-F-F-E-C-T, right? You can say this really affected me, but you can say effect, is there going to be an effect? So this is more of a noun, means that, but to affect, A-F-F-E-C-T is more of a 动词. I was affected by his action. So we have that similar word. Yeah. In America, I would say it'd be the National Security, NSA, National Security Administration, I think it's called. It's called National Security. I don't know if it's Advisory Administration. Maybe it's Advisory. I forget the A, what the A stands for exactly. But it is, and I think it's NSA. Yeah. And so we have a National Security Advisor. Do you know who the new National Security Advisor is in America under Trump? Very interesting person. I was actually watching a video yesterday of her. Her name is, I think I'm spelling that right. I think this is proper. Tulsi Gabbard, okay? A woman. She is very interesting because she was a Democrat, 民主党 representative in the U.S. House of Representatives for Hawaii. She represented Hawaii. But after she left office, she recently changed to 共和党. And she's very interesting because she is a military officer. She was in the military, 军官, for quite a few years. And she is the first, I just learned this yesterday, she is the first Hindu Jiao representative in the House of Representatives. And she likes to surf, 冲浪, because she's from Hawaii. But yeah, she's actually very outspoken. She's very strong speaker. And so Donald Trump made her his national security advisor. And it's funny because I already see some people talking and they're already saying she would be a very good presidential candidate for the future, for 总统选举. And she actually tried to get the Democrat, 民主党, the nomination last time in 2020. She tried to get the nomination. There was a whole group of people wanted to become the Democrat nominee. And of course, Joe Biden became the Democrat candidate, but she also wanted that position. And it was very funny because during the debate between all the different people who wanted to get the, on TV, they had a TV debate between the different people. She was the one that really destroyed Kamala Harris. So she's the reason that Kamala Harris left the nomination, I think a big reason, in 2020, because she asked Kamala Harris some very strong questions, and people thought she did a very good job. And because of that, after that, Kamala Harris dropped out of the race to become president. So anyhow, she's a very interesting person, but she is the new national security advisor for Donald Trump. Yeah. You mean was watching if? Yeah, we could say that they were watching if. Yeah, I think watching to see would be better, though. I think it sounds better. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's go on. It says the Bureau is providing regular updates on the incident to President William Lai, who is visiting Taiwan's diplomatic allies in the South Pacific, Tsai said. Now, of course, you know, diplomat is, what is a diplomat? Yeah, so if you are the ambassador, you know, like 大使 or whatever, you're a diplomat. So diplomat ally, what would be another word for ally? Friends. Yeah, I think the easiest word is friends, right? Our diplomatic friends in the South Pacific. Okay. And then it says Lai has instructed the NSB to closely monitor the situation in South Korea. And monitor, we've talked about this word before, monitor. What does that mean? Observe, right? If you monitor somebody, you're watching them, you're checking on them. Okay. We could say that maybe, I don't know, there's some cameras here that are monitoring our room. But monitor actually can be a person. In school, sometimes when you're taking a 考试, especially a 大考, you know, important 考试, there's usually somebody who's sitting there watching the students, right? Maybe they're walking around and they're just kind of looking at the students. We call that a monitor, a test monitor or a class monitor, because they're not there to teach. They're actually just there to watch and just make sure that nobody is cheating, right? So yeah. Proctor is a word, but proctor is more about, it's almost like, I think a proctor is a little bit more like they're actually there to help the students. Yeah. So proctor, like, for example, if you're getting ready for an examination, then proctor is somebody, it's almost like somebody who helps you study or helps you prepare for an examination. Okay, so it can be a 动词 or it could be a 名词, just like a monitor. Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, let's go ahead and read this. The Bureau is providing regular updates on the incident to President William Lai, who is visiting Taiwan's diplomatic allies. Diplomatic allies in the South Pacific, Tsai said. Lai has instructed, let's say it again. Lai has instructed the NSB to closely monitor, let's say it again, closely monitor the situation in South Korea. He added. Okay. It's funny, when we were reading this word up here, diplomatic allies, another word came to my mind. You hear this sometimes. We talk about diplomatic immunity. That's a U, sorry. Immunity. Now, you know, during COVID-19, everyone talked about becoming immune, right? What does immune mean? Yeah, you can't catch it, right? So if you say, I have immunity against COVID-19, that means I cannot catch COVID-19 because my body has some sort of antibody inside that protects me from this virus, right? So if you catch a virus, sometimes you become immune to that same virus, maybe at least for a short time, maybe forever. Or if you get a 打疫苗, right, you get a immunity from that. But diplomatic immunity, does anyone know what that means? Yeah, it's a privilege. So if you are working for a foreign government, like you are the ambassador, you know, like the 大使, right? If you live in another country, they cannot arrest you for anything or almost anything. Now, they can kick you out, okay? They can send you home, but they can't just arrest you for something, okay? This is very interesting because often this causes some problems because people who work in the 大使馆, they might think that they might do things that are actually kind of illegal, but they have diplomatic immunity, okay? I read some articles that said in New York City, oh really? This is a big problem because parking tickets, yeah. So foreign diplomats, they park illegally, 违法停车, right? Wherever, and of course the 警察 give them tickets, right? For parking, but they have diplomatic immunity. So they don't have to pay for it. So I heard New York City has millions of dollars of unpaid parking tickets that they cannot get because of diplomatic immunity. Oh, they pay for it. Right. Yeah, North American Coordination Council. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. I heard the other problem is New York is also home to the United Nations, right? 联合国. They have the same issue because there's many UN diplomats there, and so they have diplomatic immunity too. So yeah, it's a problem sometimes. Why don't we say it together? Diplomatic immunity. Immunity. Right. Now, of course, most of us, when we say I am immune, IMMUNE, that means I have immunity. So I am immune or I have immunity. So it's the same idea. We can say he is immune to smallpox or COVID-19. Okay. So anyhow, it's a good word to know. Okay. I noticed recently a lot of people are sick with colds and flus. And so some people say, well, maybe because after COVID-19, after the pandemic, our immunity is weakened. Our immunity system is weakened. I don't know. I'm not sure. Or maybe there's just a new virus going around. Okay. So anyhow, that's a photo caption. Let's go down below. It says the NSB would continue to monitor developments to determine whether there would be any long-term effects on South Korea's domestic politics or security on the Korean Peninsula and the region as a whole, Tsai said. Okay, so here's the word monitor again. Here it's a 动词, right? They will continue to monitor developments to decide whether there would be any long-term 长期影响 effects on South Korea's domestic politics, okay, 政治 or security, 安全, on the Korean Peninsula. So what's this word here, peninsula? Yeah, well, we call it, I heard someone say it, 半岛, right? Okay, so in Hong Kong, there's the most famous hotel in Hong Kong is called the Peninsula Hotel, right? The 半岛, and the British built it probably almost 100 years ago. So why don't we, of course, Korea is a peninsula, right? It's not an island. It comes down. There are big peninsulas and there are small peninsulas, So anyhow, let's say it together. Peninsula. Peninsula. Okay, yeah, what? It's a peninsula, right? Yeah. It's wrong? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's if you look at Michigan, it has that big part that sticks out, into the water. Upper. What were you gonna say? Yeah, you could say Florida is a peninsula because it comes down, and it's surrounded on three sides by water. So yeah, I'd say Florida is a kind of peninsula. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this. The NSB would continue to monitor developments to determine whether there would be any long-term effects on South Korea's domestic politics or security on the Korean Peninsula. And the region as a whole. Tsai said. Right, okay. It's funny, I have not done this, but I have so many friends when they go to, even like many years ago, when they went to Hong Kong to visit, one of their goals was to have afternoon tea time at the Peninsula Hotel, okay? 下午茶, right? At the Peninsula Hotel, because I guess they call it British high tea, where they have the, all the ta, right? With the different things, and of course it's very beautiful. I have not done that, so maybe someday, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know, yeah, Taichung has 下午茶 everywhere, right? So yeah, probably better than Hong Kong, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here it says the Bureau would assess whether the incident might cause domestic instability to a degree that it affects social order in South Korea and Taiwanese living in or visiting the country, he said. Okay, so here again is another very similar word. What does assess mean? Evaluate, right? So like we said, why do you take a 考试? Why do you take a test? A test is an assessment. It's an evaluation of your knowledge, right? How much do you know? How much did you learn, right? So we could say to assess or to evaluate. Very similar words, okay? To evaluate, to assess. And of course, the means, the noun of that is evaluation, T-I-O-N, or assessment, M-E-N-T, assessment, okay? So you could say a test or an examination is a kind of assessment, okay? Now, there's other things we assess, right? Like here they're assessing the situation. I know that for those of you who own houses or property in Taichung, sometimes the government will assess the value of your land. They might say, well, we think your land value has gone up, so we're going to raise your taxes. So we call that land assessment tax. Okay, they assess the value of your property, of your home, or your land. Okay, so why don't we say that word together? Assess. Assess. And then as a noun, assessment. Assessment. And then that word over there, evaluate. Evaluate. Evaluation. Evaluation. Right. So the Bureau will assess or evaluate whether this martial law incident might cause domestic instability. Now, I think, of course, here we have domestic and then unstable. This is like the word unstable, right? Now, we don't say if something is not stable, 稳定的, or we don't say it's unstable. We say it is unstable, okay? Just slightly different, okay? So we could say a person is unstable, right? If they're mentally, not, or their health is not very stable, we could say their health is unstable. But as a noun, we say instability. Okay, so let's start with the word over there, unstable. Unstable. Instability. Instability. Okay, so they're wondering if this incident might cause domestic instability to a degree that, okay, so degree, right, is to a level or to a, we talk about 温度, right? Like right now it's maybe about 22 degrees outside, right? But here to a degree means to what level? How much, okay? You can say, I am so tired to a degree that I could fall asleep right now. It means to what level are you tired? Or to what level, so how high or how low. So it says instability to a point, to a degree, to a level that it affects social order in South Korea. Now, of course, social order just means your 社会, is it in order or is it 乱, right? Okay. And in South Korea, and Taiwanese living in or visiting the country. Okay. So we have to see what's going to happen. Yeah. It's a prime minister, I believe. No, it's president. I don't think there's a premier. I don't think so. Not anymore. Yeah, I haven't, to my knowledge, there's just a president. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this. The Bureau would assess whether the incident might cause domestic instability. To a degree that it affects social order in South Korea and Taiwanese living, let's say it again, and Taiwanese living in or visiting the country, he said. I have to say, I've been amazed at how much travel there is between South Korea and Taiwan right now. I not only between Seoul and Taoyuan, right? I like airplanes. Okay, I think you know that. I love airplanes. So I watch the YouTube videos they film almost every day of airplanes coming and going from Taoyuan Airport. Somebody videotapes them, and I've been shocked that both Korean Airlines and Asiana Airlines, which is another Korean airline, every day they fly, A380s, the big planes, back and forth between Taiwan and Korea. And then I see just the other night I was coming out of my office and I was standing on Taiwan Dadao, and I saw every day now Korean Airlines, they fly to Taichung. So some of my friends now are very happy because they can fly from Taichung to Seoul, and then from Seoul they can fly to America. They don't have to go to Taoyuan. So I was telling my friends, I was saying, maybe I can do that in the future. I can just leave from Taichung. I don't have to go to Taoyuan. And then when I come home, I can just come home to Taichung and not to Taoyuan. That would be easier if I go through Korean Airlines. So anyhow, kind of cool. But yeah, so there's a lot of people traveling between. Lots of Taiwanese go to Korea, and I know many Koreans like to visit Taiwan. If you watch the YouTube videos, Koreans really, really like Taiwanese food. So yeah, so anyhow, it's kind of fun. So hopefully it stays stable. Okay, so here it says, there's a very short sentence here. It says, Lai weighed in on social media. Very interesting expression here. Okay, so I think you know the word weigh, right? What is to weigh? If you weigh something, how heavy it is, right? Some of you, maybe if you're on a diet, every day you will weigh yourself, right? You see how heavy you are or how light you are. But here it says, Lai weighed in on social media. When you weigh in on something, what does that mean? Actually, it means to express your opinion. Okay, so we've never talked about this before, but it's a very good expression. If you say, I'm going to weigh in on this, or he weighed in during our discussion, it means he shared his opinion. He gave his 看法, right? His idea. Okay. So this is a very common expression, to weigh in on something. It's a very interesting way of saying something, but you can say he weighed in on our discussion. It means he shared his idea. Okay. So basically, Lai used social media, 社群媒体, to share his opinion. Okay. Yeah, to weigh in on something. I guess you could just say he weighed in. No, I guess you would always say weighed in on, because you have to weigh in on something, right? What are you weighing in on? So to weigh in on whatever. Yeah. Okay. So it means to give your opinion on. That's what it means. Okay. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Let's just read that together. Lai weighed in on social media. Right. Okay. So let's go on. That's the photo caption below. So this is what he wrote on social media. He weighed in. He shared his idea. So it says here, the world, excuse me, the world, including Taiwanese, are concerned about the situation in South Korea, he wrote. He was in the Marshall Islands when the reports emerged and had immediately been briefed on the matter by the NSB. Okay, so the world is concerned about the situation. Okay, that makes sense. He was in the Marshall Islands. You know where the Marshall Islands are, right? It's one of Taiwan's diplomatic allies, a group of islands in the Pacific Ocean. It's yeah, I think we call it a U.S. protectorate. It's under the protection of the United States. It's an independent nation, but they have an agreement with the United States that they come in under this, like you said, kind of we say a commonwealth or protection of the United States. It's not a territory of the United States. Yeah, protectorate means that the United States is responsible for their security. And I don't know the exact terms of this agreement, but I believe that the U.S. provides protection for these island groups. In exchange, the U.S. it's kind of a special relationship. Like the United States has military bases on these islands, and they actually, I think they use the U.S. dollar too. I think they use the U.S. dollar. So the Marshall Islands are very close to what American island? Guam, Guandao. It's like right next door, okay? So, yeah, so it's kind of a special relationship. After World War II, there are many of these island groups. Not all of them, of course, became U.S. protectorates, but yeah, some did. Okay, so he was in the Marshall Islands when the reports emerged. Now, of course, emerge means to come out, right? To be released. Now, you can emerge from sleep, right? You could say, I emerged from deep sleep, okay? If you were sleeping very deeply and you emerged from your sleep, means you woke up. You came out of your sleep, okay? You can say he emerged from his room. He came out of his room. He walked out of his room. He came out. But here, man, we talk about the report emerge or the news emerge. It means the news came out. So it's that idea of coming out, okay? So when the reports emerge, why don't we say that word together? Emerged. Emerged. Okay, so reports emerged and had immediately, immediately had been briefed on the matter, on the situation. Okay, now brief, we talk about the word brief means, what's a normal word for brief? It means short, right? But if you are briefed on something, what does that mean? What does that mean? Yeah, if a briefing is a short report on something, okay? So if you brief somebody, it means you give them a report on something. So this word gets used in the government a lot, but it could also be used in, I guess, companies or whatever. But I think this word is most often used on government. So a briefing, ing, if you have a f-ing, a briefing is a 名词. It says he received a briefing from his office on the situation. Or you could say I briefed him. It means I gave him the report. I briefed him. But here, of course, he was briefed, or he received a briefing. Okay, so this word gets used in different ways. But anyhow, it means a report. Often, usually a short report, because brief means short. Okay, yes. Yeah, I guess so. Briefcase. No, it doesn't mean that. I don't think it means. Actually, that's a good question. I don't know if it means the case is small, or if it means that it's used for briefing. Yeah. I don't know. I think if I were to guess, I think probably it means it's small, it's short. So a briefcase, which would be BRIEF, one word, CASE, is like a business case, like a bag that you put your reports and things in. It usually has a handle. Businessmen like to carry it, well, businesswomen too. They like to carry it, and you walk to work, and you have your stuff in there. So we call that a briefcase. Okay, briefcase, not a suitcase, but a briefcase. Okay. Any other questions about this? Okay, let's read this then. He was in the Marshall Islands when the reports emerged, and had immediately been briefed on the matter by the NSB. He said. Okay, and then let's go on. It says, he instructed the Bureau to stay on top of the issue, update him on related information, and prepare response measures to ensure national security as well as protect Taiwanese in South Korea, he wrote. Okay, now there's a very interesting expression here. He told the Bureau, his own Bureau, the NSB, he told the Bureau to stay on top of the issue. What does this mean, to stay on top of the issue? Right. It means you keep track of something. You follow it very closely. It means you pay attention to it, right? So if you say, don't worry, I'm staying on top of this. I will stay on top of this, or I will stay on top of this issue. I will stay on top of this problem. It means I will follow this. I will keep in touch with it. So it's a good expression, to stay on top of something. It means that you're watching it very closely. It's a little bit like the word monitor, right? To monitor something, you watch it very closely. If there's something that needs to be done, you do it to stay on top of it. Okay. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So he told the Bureau to stay on top of the issue, or the situation, to update him on related information, and to prepare response measures. Now, of course, the response measure be, what do we do if something happens? What is our response? What measure? What is our, what do we do in response to ensure national security and protect Taiwanese in South Korea? Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. He instructed the Bureau to stay on top of the issue, update him on related information, and prepare response measures to ensure national security, as well as protect Taiwanese in South Korea, he wrote. Okay. It says here, visiting 3 countries and crossing the date line twice due to his stopover in Hawaii, from the Marshall Islands to Tuvalu and Guam on his stopover yesterday, before visiting Palau tomorrow, Lai said that the countries on his Pacific tour all value democracy. Now, of course, when you value something, value is often a 名词, right? You can say, what is the value of your house? What is the value of your car right now? How much is it worth? But here it becomes a 动词, right? To value something means to put value in something. You believe it has value. Okay? So if you value democracy, it means you think you put or give democracy some value. Now, if you don't value democracy, it means you don't think it's important. It doesn't mean anything. So you could say, many people say, I value my freedom, or I value my independence, or I value my free time, right? Some people value their time outside of work. They want to go and spend time relaxing, okay? So anything that you think is valuable, it means you value that. You could say, I value my family, right? That's very normal. You value your family. They mean something to you. They're worth something, okay? So that's a good word. Why don't we say together, value? Value. Okay. Yes. I say value. Yeah. Now, that might just be my way of speaking. Value. Oh, really? Well, I'm not British, so yeah. I'm American, so yeah, I say value. Yeah. I think that's how most Americans would say value. Yeah. Okay, so it says here, this is interesting. Visiting 3 countries and crossing the date line. Do you know what the date line is? Yeah, we call that the international date line. So what happens when you cross the international date line? Right, you add, well, it depends which way you're going, right? You can add a day or subtract a day. So it's very funny. Every time if I fly from Taiwan to Hawaii, every time I go there, I arrive in Hawaii before I left Taiwan. Yeah, because you cross the date line, right? Now, of course, when you return, you lose a day, right? Because of that date line. But that date line runs right down the Pacific Ocean there, the Taipingyang. So anyhow, let's say together, date line. Now, some people say international date line, but it's the same thing. So he crossed the date line twice due to or because of his stopover in Hawaii. Now, of course, a stopover is usually a short stop, right? Sometimes when you're flying to another country, you will stop over in somewhere. Like I remember one year the last time I was in Korea, for example, I spent the night there because I had a short stopover there. And so I thought, well, I'll just spend the night in Seoul and, walk around and enjoy it. And then the next day I fly on to America. So it was a very short stopover. So I just had the evening, the night, and then the next morning, and then I flew out. I just remember it was like this. It was December, and it was very, very cold. I just remember how cold it was. There was snow on the ground. Yeah. It is a lot of mafan. It is. I remember when I was traveling in China a long time ago, it was a big pain because officially, all of China has the same time zone, right? But unofficially, if you're close, a lot of people living closer to like Hong Kong, right? They would use their own time zone, right? So I still remember when I'll never forget this. My friend and I were taking a bus we were supposed to get a bus, early morning bus from Wuzhou we were going from Guilin, actually it was Yangshou, to Wuzhou, and we had the bus ticket bought. I bought the bus ticket and it said, I don't know, I forget, it said like 6 a.m. And so I went back to the hotel and I was like, great, we're leaving at 6 a.m. Then I thought, is this really like 6 a.m. China time, or is it 6 a.m. Hong Kong time or whatever, different? So I actually walked all the way back to the bus station to ask them and say, is this official Chinese time or is this your local time? Because many people were using different time zones. So yeah, it's a lot of trouble. It's kind of crazy actually to use. Yeah, it was the official time. Yeah. So, but I didn't want to show up 1 hour late or 1 hour early or whatever. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah. Layover, stopover, same thing. Yeah, you could say that. You could say I'm laying over there, I'm stopping over there, or a stopover is a minzu, or a layover. So he used the word L-A-Y. Layover is the same thing. It's like a short stop in a different country. So you could say layover or stopover. Either one is fine. They're the same idea. Okay. So he went from the Marshall Islands to Tuvalu. That's another small island country, and Guam on his stopover yesterday before visiting Palau, which I think you all know. Was it Borneo, right? Yeah, very famous place because Taiwanese know Palau. Palau is a very strong ally of Taiwan. Okay. Yeah. There was a very, really difficult, brutal battle fought between the United States and Japan on one of the small islands in Palau called Peleliu. Very, very bad. And the thing about that battle is after they fought the battle, of course, many Americans, many Japanese died. Many people thought it was not really necessary to invade that island because the United States went to invade Philippines afterwards, and they thought this island doesn't really mean much, but yeah. Okay, so anyhow, let's read this together. Visiting 3 countries and crossing the date line twice due to his stopover in Hawaii from the Marshall Islands to Tuvalu and Guam on his stopover yesterday before visiting Palau tomorrow. Lai said that the countries on his Pacific tour all value democracy. Okay, so it says here, Taiwan's democracy was hard-earned, he said. The values of democracy and freedom are the cornerstone of Taiwan's connections with the world and is a lifestyle that we cherish and protect from generation to generation. Okay, when we say, this is a good expression, hard-earned, it becomes a 形容词. What does that mean? I think you can tell. Yeah, it means we paid a heavy price. Of course, you earn money, right? You work and you earn money, right? So if something is hard-earned, it means you had to work hard to earn it, right? It wasn't easy, okay? So if something is hard-earned, often we use this word, we talk about hard-earned freedom, okay? I worked hard to get my freedom, okay? So, yeah, hard-earned reputation. You know, I worked hard so that people will think I'm a good person. My reputation is very important. Okay, so why don't we say together, hard-earned. 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 And the word earn, of course, is a good word. It means to, you know, 赚, like 赚钱, right? Like you can say, how much money do you earn every month? Okay, or if you want to turn that into a 名词, we say earnings. E-A-R-N-I-N-G-S. Earnings. What were your earnings from this job? Okay, or we could simply say, how much did you earn from this job? Okay, so it's a good word. He said the values, okay, of democracy and freedom are the cornerstone. Now, this is another good word. What is a cornerstone? Yeah, it's like I think I've shared with you before, when you put up a building, now I think it's different today, but long time ago, when they would build a building, they would start with a cornerstone. It's like the stone, it sits on a corner of the building, and from that building, that stone, they start building the whole building. It goes out from that stone. So that stone is the first stone, and then it's like a foundation, right? It's like the base, the foundation of something, okay? So cornerstone, of course, means the central, most important thing, okay? So the value of democracy and freedom are the cornerstone of Taiwan's connections, you know, their relationship to the world. So why don't we say this together? Cornerstone. 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 Okay. And is a lifestyle that we cherish. Now, lifestyle, of course, is the way you live, right? Many people say that Taichung is the lifestyle capital, 首都 of Taiwan, right? They think, oh, the lifestyle here is pretty good. And they enjoy the lifestyle of Taichung, maybe because it's more relaxed, the weather is nice, you know, the city's more spread out. I think I shared with you about 3 years ago, I think I told you this already, but I met a young couple from Hong Kong who moved to Taiwan. And they said that they visited all the major cities in Taiwan. They went to Taipei, of course. They went to Kaohsiung. They went to Tainan. And then they chose to make their home in Taichung. And I asked them, I said, why did you choose Taichung? I mean, Taipei is a bigger city. I was curious, of course. And the guy looked at me, and he very immediately, he said, of course we chose Taichung. Taichung is the California of Taiwan. So I thought that was very funny. I never heard anyone call Taichung the California of Taiwan. But I thought, so now I'll always remember that. I say Taichung is the California of Taiwan. So I think he meant the weather was good and the lifestyle was nice. Okay, so anyhow, this is a good word. Let's say together, lifestyle. Lifestyle. Okay, so this is a lifestyle that we cherish. And what does cherish mean? We value, or a simple word for that is we love. Okay, if you cherish something, it means you love it. Okay, it's very, very important to you. So, of course, we usually say we cherish our family, our relatives, our family members, our children, our job. We might cherish our job, maybe, not always. But yeah, so why don't we say together, cherish. 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 There's an expression, often people say you should cherish this moment, right? When you're going through life, sometimes there's a very important moments like something that's very meaningful or important to you, and you say you need to cherish this moment because, maybe it will not come again. Maybe it's just, appreciate. But I think cherish is even stronger than appreciate. Cherish means you really love it. Yeah, kind of like that. Seize the moment, to take the opportunity, cherish the moment. Okay, yeah. So it says cherish and protect. It's a lifestyle we cherish and protect from generation to generation. Of course, generation is your 年代, right? Okay, so let's read this together. Taiwan's democracy was hard-earned. Hard-earned, he said. The values of democracy and freedom are the cornerstone of Taiwan's connections with the world and is a lifestyle that we cherish and protect from generation to generation. Okay. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen many of you have probably seen the movie Saving Private Ryan with Tom Hanks, right? It's a World War II movie about D-Day, right? The invasion of France by the Allied powers. But anyhow, it's a good movie. I think it got an Oscar award. I don't know. But Tom Hanks is the main character, right? He's the main actor in the movie. So if you've seen the movie, you know that this small group of soldiers have to go find this one soldier whose brothers were all killed. And so the U.S. Army decides that they need to bring him home because he's the only son who's left. I think there were 3 brothers that were killed, or 2 brothers. Anyhow, 3 maybe. So anyhow, I hope I'm not giving away the movie if you haven't seen the movie. But anyhow, at the very end, Tom Hanks, his last words to the other soldier that they save, who's played by Matt Damon, right? Ryan, his name's Ryan, of course. He tells him, earn it. Earn, the word earn, right? Basically, what he means is that all these other soldiers gave their lives to rescue him, to bring him home. So he's saying that your life should earn what they paid. Does everybody understand that? So, if somebody gives their life for you, then you should make your life worth something. You should earn their sacrifice. I guess that's the way you put it. Does everyone understand that idea? Yeah, earn their sacrifice, right? They gave their life for you, so you should make your life valuable, right? You should do something important with your life, right? Make it meaningful, right? Don't waste it. 不要浪费, right? Because they paid for it. And so, So when he says earn it, he means earn this sacrifice with the rest of your life. Pay the price. Yeah, I guess it. Make it worth it. Yeah, to make your life count, right? Right. It means that it's like saying, in a way, it's like saying you have an obligation. Does everybody know obligation? Okay. That's a good word. I don't think we've talked about that, right? I don't think we've learned this word. Or we could say obligated. Okay. So, sorry, a little bit messy here. We have obligation, that's a 名词. I am obliged, or I am obliged to, or I'm obligated to. Same idea. What is an obligation? A little bit stronger than that. I think obligation means you owe something to somebody. Okay? Now, usually it could be money, of course, financial obligation, right? So I'll give you an example. I think this is cultural. In Taiwan, I've noticed sometimes if a child, let's say a son or daughter, they borrow lots of money and then they cannot pay it back, their family will take that obligation. The family of the person's family will pay back the money for their child, for the child. They'll say, okay, he can't pay his debt back, so we will cover his debt. We are obligated for his debt, his money. In America, we don't usually do that. We think that's your problem. You're an adult, so you take up your own problem. Not always. I mean, I think some American parents would pay their child's debt, but we call that an obligation. I have something that I should cover. It's my response. You said responsibility. That's true. Or I have a responsibility for something, or I have something that I owe to somebody. Okay, so I'll give you another example. In Taiwan, especially, your parents take care of you when you're a child, right? So when they get older, people feel obligated to take care of their parents. They feel they have an obligation to their parents. It means that they have something they owe their parents, or they have a responsibility to their parents because their parents took care of them. Now it's their job to take care of their parents. That's an obligation. Does everybody understand that? Yeah, it's like a duty. Yeah, but it's more like, when I think of duty, it's more like it's something you actually owe to somebody. Okay? So when we said earlier that movie, Saving Private Ryan, basically that soldier has an obligation to the people that gave their lives for him, right? So we say, so there's an expression that we use a lot in English, right? If someone helps you out, let's say they help you, and you could say thank you very much, right? But there's one expression people say is much obliged. Basically what they're saying is, I am much obliged to you. So often people, for short, they'll just say much obliged. It means you helped me, so it's almost like I owe you something, right? You helped me, so I really owe you something. Actually, there's another good expression. It's the same idea. Some people would say, I am in your debt, or I am indebted. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually another one. Yeah. That's good. Okay, so these are all very similar, right? If someone says much obliged, okay, much obliged. I'll just write this in short. It's a little bit old, but people still say it sometimes. Yeah, it's a little bit older way of saying it. So if someone says, I am much obliged, or much obliged, it means I owe you. Okay. Another one, I am in your debt. Okay, same idea. I am indebted to you. Now, of course, this doesn't mean I really owe you money, but it means I am in your debt. I mean, I owe you. And then a very casual, very 轻松 the way of saying is, I owe you one. Now, of course, one is very general. Or we could say, I owe you. Thanks very much. I really owe you. Or I owe you one. So that means you did something for me. I really, I think you understand, right? Yeah. So anyhow, these are good words to know. So why don't we read these together? First of all, this one here, obligation. Obligation. Obliged. I am obliged. Obligated. I am obligated to. Okay, much obliged. Much obliged. I am in your debt. Okay, remember the B is not pronounced. It's quiet, silent. So it's D. It's like debt, not debit. Okay, so let's say it again. I am in your debt. I am indebted to you. I am indebted to you. I owe you one. Or we could simply say, I owe you. Right. We don't say usually once, we say one. Yeah. A lot of people will say, I owe you, if it's a big, someone helps you a lot, you can say, I owe you big time, BIGTIME, big time. You know, big time means a lot. Okay, I owe you big time. Okay, so that's obviously very casual expression. Okay, so yeah, so these are all good words that we learn here. Says here, the path of democracy is one that we continue to walk, he added. Now, let's go on and read this too. It says, Tsai En-lai's remarks came after South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol declared emergency martial law in South Korea late on Tuesday night, claiming that opposition forces in the National Assembly were engaging in anti-state actions, okay, or anti-state actions related to North Korea. Okay, so here's that word again, martial law. We talked about that. He claimed, he said that the opposition forces, okay, that means the other parties. I think there's several parties who are not in his party. They're on the other, dang, okay? So they're opposing him. Of course, opposition means against, right? So opposition party, forces rather, in the National Assembly. So this is like their version of the 立法院. It's, I guess you call it 国会 or something like that. National Assembly, we're engaging in. Okay, now when we say engaging in, we could say involved in. They were engaging in something. They were doing something. So we can say engaging in or involved in anti-state actions. Now, again, this word anti, we can say anti or anti. Either way is okay. Anti-I. Anti-state actions. It means doing something to go against the state, to hurt the country. Okay, anti-state actions. Okay, related to North Korea. Of course, North Korea is their great enemy. So yeah. Any questions about this? Yeah, well, yeah, that's... I think coup d'etat would be too... Yeah, well... Yeah, I think that would be almost too strong. It'd be going almost saying too much, because it's not like they were sending the military out to take over the government. It was just he says they're helping North Korea. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit 夸张. Yeah, probably you can't use the word coup d'etat. Anyhow, I won't. Coup d'etat is a French word, and it means to take over the government, to overthrow the government. But usually it means with military force. Use the army or soldiers to take over the control of the government, of the country. So, of course, these guys in the National Assembly are not in charge of the army. They don't have military force, but he says they're helping North Korea. So, yeah. Okay, so we could say that actually, I'll teach you another word. We can say that his justification it's an O. To justify. What does to justify mean? Right. If you justify your action, means why did I do this? I will give you my reasons. Okay. So if you justify your actions, it means it's almost like, it's a little bit like the word excuse. Your 借口, right? Why did you do that? Okay. You need to justify your actions. You need to tell me why you did that. Okay. So this president here, he justified this martial law by saying that this happened, right? That was his justification. That was his, well, I think excuse, 借口 is probably maybe almost a better word. His excuse, his justification, his reason for doing something. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Yes. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah. So often when we say, let's say you have a child and they do something wrong, and then you ask them, why did you do that? And they try to justify their action. Okay. They try to give you an excuse. Well, I did that because, of something, right? Okay, so why don't we say together, to justify. To justify. Justification. Justification. And we usually use the word give. I gave, or he gives. He gave me a justification, means to provide, to give. It's something that you give somebody. You provide that to them. You say, yeah. Well, I think he said that word too. It's similar to rationalize. It's a two. Or then we can turn that into a rationalization. Okay. Rationalize means to, I will say rationalize can also be inside our own heads, right? When we rationalize our actions, we say, well, I was okay to do that because. So we're basically making an excuse. Now, sometimes we will rationalize this to somebody else, but we might rationalize something in our own minds, right? You know, we're all very good at that. Let's say somebody, you decide to cheat on your test, right? And then you think, well, cheating is okay because they have my classmates have a big advantage over me, so I need to cheat because that way I can. That's unfair. Their situation is unfair, so I need to cheat. Or I can steal that money from him because he's richer than I am, right? He has too much money, and so I can take some of his money. So that's called rationalizing something, right? In your mind, you make up an excuse. Yeah, you could say also to justify something. Yeah, but I think rationalization is almost more of a slightly more of, they're similar, more of a mental exercise, right? You're mentally coming up with an excuse. They're all very similar. To make an excuse, to rationalize, to justify. Yeah, very similar. Okay. Yeah, so it's very similar word, rationalize. Actually, why don't we say it together? To rationalize. Rationalize. Rationalization. Rationalization. Yeah, these are all good words. Okay, let's read this together then. The path of democracy is one we continue to walk. Let's say it again. Is the one we continue to walk. He added. Tsai and Lai's remarks came after South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol declared emergency martial law in South Korea late on Tuesday night, claiming that opposition forces in the National Assembly were engaging in anti-state actions related to North Korea. Okay. I'll just short note here. Remarks, of course, would be very similar to the word comments, right? If you make a comment, you know, we say what you say a few words about something, or you express your opinion on something. His remarks, his comments, his words. Okay, so his remarks came after this guy, president, declared emergency martial law. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention too. I think you all know this too, of course. But you know what a path is, right? It's a road. Yeah. So you walk on a path. Usually a path is a small road, like a hiking path or trail. You know, like if you go to Dakeng, I'm sure there's many paths or trails. Yeah, it's usually a path. We don't normally drive a car on a path, right? A path is for people to walk on, not to drive on. So because it's usually very narrow. So we can say that, we could say the road of democracy is one we continue to walk. I guess we could say it, but path sounds better. Yeah. So yeah, it's just a, yeah. I think you all understand that. Okay. Let's read a couple more paragraphs and then we'll be done. It says here, South Korea's National Assembly voted in the early hours of yesterday to lift the martial law. And Yoon lifted the decree hours after conferring with his cabinet. Okay, what is a decree? It's an order. Okay. Now, when we say a decree, we don't use it. This word is almost always used for a ruler or leader of a country, because if you use this word for anyone else, it doesn't sound very good. If your parents or your teacher give you a decree, that would sound kind of bad, like they think they're super powerful or something like that. So we would say he ordered him to do that, or he asked him to do that. But a decree comes from like a leader, or like a king, right? The Pope, yeah, somebody who's very powerful. So we say decree means like an order, but it's from a high level person to people below them. So why don't we say together, decree, decree. Now we can also use this word as a dong, so you can say he decreed with a D, add a D at the end. He decreed that whatever this would happen. He gave out a decree. Okay, so decree. So they voted in the early hours of yesterday to lift, to stop, to end the martial law, and he lifted the decree, the order, hours later after conferring with his cabinet. What does the word to confer mean? Right, you know the word conference, right? What does a conference do? A conference means that people discuss something, right? So to confer means to discuss something with somebody. You could say, I conferred with my friend before I made a decision. It means I discussed this with him. So to confer doesn't have to be a group of people. It could be one-on-one. You could confer with your husband or your wife or your friend or somebody else. It means you talk to them. You discuss something with them. So why don't we say it together? To confer. To confer. Conferring. Conferring. Okay, so he conferred with his cabinet, and I think you all know cabinet is like their, in Taiwan we have the 行政院, right? The group of the 部长, okay? We say cabinet. Okay, so let's read this together. South Korea's National Assembly voted in the early hours of yesterday to lift the martial law. And Yoon lifted the decree hours later after conferring with his cabinet. Okay, cabinet. Okay, so yeah, well, of course, when we say early hours of yesterday, it means like 凌晨, like, I don't know, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. It's the early hours of the day, the very beginning. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so anyhow, I don't think we have to go further in this story, but yeah, basically, a what? Curfew. Is there a curfew? I'm not. Still now, or? Okay, everybody knows what a curfew is, right? What's a curfew? Now the curfew can come from the government, or it could come from your parents, right? Now, if your parents tell you, you cannot go out after 9 p.m., you have to be home before 9 p.m., you cannot go out after that time, that's a curfew, okay? Now, the government may say that too, especially if there's like a emergency, right? They might tell everybody, you have to stay at home after 9 p.m., you have to stay in your home, you can't go outside. That's called a curfew, a government curfew. So that's what that word means. Let's say together, curfew. Curfew. Right. Oh, Black Lives Matter. You mean the BLM, the protests? I think so. In some cities, or yeah, wherever they had this, violence or problems. Yeah, it's not a very common thing, of course, but sometimes it's quite important. Okay, let's see here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. But it's different, actually, slightly different. Can they not go out at all, or can they go out after a certain time? So if you cannot go out at all, what do we call that? Well, there's another word, though. There's another word. I know I taught you this word during I Ching. Starts with a Q. Yes. So quarantine. That's a U. Quarantine. What is that in Chinese? 隔离, right? Yeah. So quarantine. If you say I am under a quarantine, or they quarantine the people of city, means you cannot go out at all, right? You have to stay at home. So you remember, of course, during COVID-19, when you came back from traveling, you had to quarantine in your hotel or at your home for 5 days or 1 week or even 2 weeks. So yeah, very bad memory. I can't believe that was only 3 years ago. That's crazy, right? It's like another life, different life. Yeah. So why don't we say a word together? Quarantine. Quarantine. But even today, I'll give you an example. I have some friends from America. When they want to bring their, go or xiao mao to Taiwan, they have to quarantine their pet for, I think, 10 days or 2 weeks over there at Zhongxing Daxue. There's a special quarantine center for animals. So when those animals come from America or other countries to Taiwan, they have to keep them there because they want to make sure that they're not sick with disease. There's one specific disease that Taiwan is very concerned with. It's called rabies. I don't know how you say rabies in Chinese. Yeah, it makes animals go crazy, right? Yeah, and if an animal bites a person, they have to 打针. I hear it's very painful. But anyhow, it's called rabies. But yeah, so they quarantine animals to make sure they're not sick, or they don't bring in a disease from another country to infect the Taiwanese animals. So that's called quarantine. So they quarantine pets or dogs or cats in Taiwan. I've had many friends who had to quarantine their dog when they came here, and they feel very, very sad, 难过, because they their animals are there. But the nice thing is, I know my friends, you can go play with your dog or your cat every day if you want. So you can visit him or her in quarantine, and you can also give them their toys, their 玩具 or their things. You can leave them there. That's also, but it's kind of. You mean for animals? Yeah, because I believe Taiwan is a rabies-free country, I think. But America is not a rabies-free country. So animals coming from outside into America, I don't think America cares as much about animals. But they do care about something else. They really, really care about fruits and vegetables. So if you've ever traveled to America, they will always ask you, or they'll warn you, do not bring fruit or vegetables, fresh fruit or vegetables into the country. Because that's why when you go through the 美国 海关, they always have, you're getting your bags, they have those dogs, 小狗, and they're sniffing, they're smelling your bags. Of course, they might be smelling your bags for like doping, right, drugs, but they're actually, most importantly, they're smelling your bags for fruit, 水果, and 蔬菜, vegetables, because they don't want that to come in, because sometimes there's like a disease or like a bug, some sort of bug on the plant that can infect the domestic, there's a word, domestic vegetables or fruits. So, But I heard that actually one of the most strict countries I've ever seen for this is Australia, 澳洲. I still remember, I don't know if they still do this. I haven't been to Australia in a long time, but I still remember when the first time I went to Australia, we were still in the airplane, sitting there, and these two officers came down with and they sprayed the whole airplane while we were sitting in the seats. Yeah, they sprayed the inside of the airplane because of this. So yeah, I thought, wow, this is kind of scary. Like what's in this spray, you know? So yeah. But yeah, so that's a kind of, you can quarantine actually they call it the quarantine department. So yeah. Or just protecting your, you could say that. You could say that country is under quarantine. It's being quarantined. Yeah, it's like an embargo, or there's different words for that. Yeah. But usually this word has more of a medical related reason to it. Yeah. Okay. Well, a phobia is an irrational fear, but I don't know that. She just used the word, she said it's a kind of phobia, right? Actually, this is a word we have never learned. What is a phobia? Right, but some people would say a phobia is an irrational fear. Okay, so what does irrational mean? It's not reasonable. It doesn't make sense, right? So, I'm not saying it's, some people have phobias. Many people have phobias. Maybe some of you have phobias. Okay, I'll give you an example. I hope this doesn't make her upset. I was having lunch with a friend yesterday. No, she told me that she has a phobia about geckos, bihu, right? So whenever she sees a bihu, she freaks out. I'm like, what? I like bihu. I like geckos, right? They're very cute, 很可爱, and they eat the insects, right? I think geckos are great, right? She's like, oh no, I hate geckos. They're terrible, So you know what a gecko is, right? Bihu. Gecko. Yeah. In fact, I want geckos in my house because I think they're good luck and they eat the insects, right? But she has a phobia about geckos or of geckos. So, you might say, well, gecko, it's fine. It's harmless, right? It's good it eats the insects, right? It's fine. So why are you afraid of a gecko? Now, some people have other phobias. What are other phobias? They're afraid of heights, right? They don't like to go up on a high building. They get very scared, or even go up on the stairs. Some people are claustrophobic. Claustrophobic means a fear of small spaces, right? So maybe you take the DNT and you don't like you walk down the stairs because you don't like to be in a small space. That's called claustrophobia. Actually, it's a very common fear. Yeah, xenophobia. Yeah. So claustrophobia is a fear of small spaces. But xenophobia actually is a very common term. It's a fear of foreigners, of 外国人, of outsiders. Okay? So if you say that country is very xenophobic, so we use the word as a 形容词, we say xenophobic. Okay? It means that's a 形容词. You could say that country is very xenophobic. It means they do not like outsiders. They do not like 外国人. Okay? If you go there, they're not friendly to you. Okay? So, of course, Taiwan is not a xenophobic country. It's a very friendly country. But claustrophobia is a very common word. You can say he is claustrophobic. It means he's very afraid of small spaces. So there's many fears, right? Some people, there's a fear of speaking, public speaking. Some people don't like to speak in front of a group of people. They get very, very scared. I had a friend who was a concert piano player. She was very good at playing piano. She gave many concerts in front of big audiences. But I still remember this. One day, I was invited to go give a speech, 演讲, at 救国团 in Taiwan. And I invited her to join me because I said, you can speak with me. You can speak on this. And I remember she was so scared. She was almost crying. And I said, why? What's going on? What's wrong? And she says, I'm so scared to speak to a group of people. And I thought, wait a minute, you're a piano player, right? You give big concerts in front of big audiences. But it was very funny that she had this fear of public speaking, even though she had no problem giving a piano concert. So yeah, people have these fears. And so we call those irrational fears because in a way, there's nothing to really be afraid of, right? Of course, there's things that we should be afraid of, like, getting in a bad car accident or falling off a building or getting sick with a bad disease. But an irrational fear is a fear that does not really make sense. It's not something you really should be afraid of, but we call it a phobia. Okay, so, well, they're kind of gross looking. They look kind of scary and they move very fast and maybe they're dirty. I don't know. Yeah, I do not have a phobia of cockroaches, but yeah. So yeah, let's say that word together. Phobia. Right. So we might say, do you have a phobia of something? Okay. Or you might say, I have a phobia about this or of this, or he has many phobias. So it's a good word to know, but it's not a word that, if it's a normal fear, that's okay. But if it's an irrational fear, then we'd say a phobia. So why don't we say these words together here? Why don't we say this together? Irrational fear. Irrational fear. Okay, here's a very long word, but it's actually, this one's quite common. Claustrophobia. Claustrophobia. And this one's quite common too. Now this X here is pronounced with a Z sound, right? Let's say xenophobia. Xenophobia. And then let's say it as a 形容词, xenophobic. Xenophobic. Right. Now, this word here is actually just a good word, right? Because if you are being irrational, it means it's not making sense. You're not making any sense. You're not using it's not sensible, right? So if you're having an argument with somebody and they're just saying, 乱讲, they're just saying crazy stuff, you might just say, you're being irrational. Why don't you agree with me? This is the right thing to do. Don't be irrational, okay? So, or if you want to turn that around, the opposite, you could say, this is very rational. We should do this. This is the right thing to do. Or you are thinking very rationally, right? Becomes a 副词. So these are good words to know. Why don't we say it one more time? Irrational. And then rational. Rationally. Right. So these are good things to think. Yeah, but we don't use the word philia by itself. Okay. So philia means a love of something, and you'll see this word come up in many different English words. I think it's a Latin word, but you'll see this word philia. It means a love or affection for something. Like, what are some examples of that? Yeah, philosophy. Okay, which is 哲学, right? Or something. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you a word. I hear this a lot in the news. Actually, I'll just write at the top here. So, this is, I see in the news because people talk about 同性恋, right? So there's two words I hear a lot. I hear homophobic and oops. That's an O, sorry. Homophilia. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm spelling this wrong. Sorry. Okay. You hear this a lot because, in 美国 and sometimes in Taiwan, and people, they're having a big argument about this. And so if someone says, oh, he is homophobic, it means he hates or I shouldn't say hates, he's fearful about homosexuality. He's afraid of it, okay? But if homophilia means someone who is very, it doesn't mean that they are homosexual, but it means they are friendly or accepting of this idea. Okay, so here's that word philia and phobic, and we can see they're used in very similar ways. But we don't usually use this word philia by itself. Phobia we use by itself. This word gets used independently. Phobia. He has a phobia, but we don't say he has a philia. We don't say that. Okay, that's not the way we say it. But the words. So it's interesting to see these words and how we use those words and how we create them. These English words. Does everybody understand that? Any questions on that? Why don't we read this together? Homophobic. Homophobic. Homophilia. Homophilia. I'm trying to think of other words that use the word philia. I guess we could say love of books. Yeah. I guess we could say biblo, B-I-B. Biblo means books. So I guess if we say bibliophilia means a love of books. Someone who loves books, loves reading, okay? I'm sure there's other words. I'm just not thinking of them right now. But yeah. Yeah. Any questions about that? But we don't say musical philia. Oh, really? Yeah, I think that's kind of an imaginary word, but yeah. Yeah, I guess we could say that. I'm not familiar with that word, but I think we could say that. So we might say xenophilia, which would be a love or acceptance of foreigners, outsiders. So I guess you could say, but that would seem kind of strange. A love of heights, a love of small places. That would seem kind of strange, right? I guess, maybe. But then that sounds kind of weird, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, anyhow, there's a lot of, this is the fun we can have with English, right? Taking apart words and figuring out what means what. And the more you go deeper into English, the more you start to find some of these words that give you clues about what they mean, right? Like words like phobia or philia, okay? Okay, good. Well, that's all we have time for today. But hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next week, I guess. Yeah. Okay. We'll see you. Thank you.